This video is all about using the instant NGP software to take in a video that you've made and turn it into a NeRF and then let you create a little animation flying around through it. So I'm going to assume you know how to download this software. There's now a Windows binary release. You've got it all set up. You've got Anaconda running, and you've properly seen the little fox NeRF on the screen. So you've basically gotten it going. This is more about making the movie and whatnot. So let's say I have a movie. Here's a little movie. It's not much of a movie. It's just really meant to capture this model, which is a sort of a practice model by this famous sculptor, Daniel Chester French, who did like the sculpture of Lincoln at the Lincoln Memorial and so on. And this is just a guy, Charles Devens, who's a Civil War Union general and later became Attorney General. Anyway, so that's the movie, and I've sort of captured it as best I could. And what I first want to do is basically take frames from it. So let's see, I have to go to where the instant NGP software is. So that's that. And all of these commands will be in the notes below this video. And so now I'm going to start this process running, which is to extract the images. So if you look at this movie, you basically are now going to get a bunch of images that get created from the movie. And you can go look this up. It's basically doing like 2 frames per second. So it's going to pull out a bunch of frames from this little movie. The cool thing here is this thing's just been added called overwrite, which basically says, hey, don't pause, don't ask the user, are you sure you want to overwrite this data and so on. So this is really handy for batch processing. But anyway, this is going to churn for a minute or two, and I'll be back when it's done. It's done churning, and now we have a bunch of images. So what I like to do is go through these images and delete the blurry ones. And in fact, there's a whole web page that you can read carefully, which is all these sort of data set tips and so on. And it recommends the same, because it's sort of garbage in, garbage out. If the images are blurry, they're not going to do you much good at all. So there's a blurry one. I delete it. That one's kind of blurry too. Let's just get rid of it. And what I'm doing is just using IRF on view to kind of walk through all the images. And as I see a blurry one, I just make it go away. So yeah, that one's kind of blurry. Let's delete it. You just hit the delete key. You can also hit the X up here, but delete key is just plain easier. So anyway, let's crunch through this, get this process over with. I'm just deleting a bunch. And this also tells you that you should probably try to avoid moving the camera around so quickly so you don't get such blurry images. You could also just take a bunch of still images if you want, but that can take a while, so making a little video is often faster. So I'm almost done. And sure, that looks good. That means I'm at the end. And now I'm ready to go on to the next process, which is camera matching. So what that is I'll just, again, toss these 2 commands in. And now what it's going to do is just exhaustively match cameras and come up with some more data about that kind of stuff. And what's nice is actually if you have an iPhone 12 Pro or newer, there's a different system called Record 3D, which you can use to have the sort of recorded camera positions come into the system. So that can be a little bit cleaner. But I've got an iPhone 11 and nothing fancy, and so I'm just doing it this way. So we'll let that crunch for a minute, and we'll be back after that. We're back, and now we have some extra data files and whatnot. And now we're ready to do the next thing, and the most fun thing really, is to run Instant NGP itself. And Instant NGP now has this whole ability to make the animations inside Instant NGP. So it's definitely a more pleasant process. So let's just resize a little bit. And you can see it's resolving here. It's just pulling in my images and doing its best to make the statue. And basically you just look at this loss graph. And when this loss graph is just all up and down sort of teeth pattern and it's not dropping at all, then you're kind of done and you could stop training or whatever. But right now it's training along and that's fine. We can still interact with the software and do some other setup. So one thing I like to do is you know, you can see it's kind of noisy around the edges. There's a lot of stuff, and I really just want to focus on the statue. So what I'm going to do is trim it down. What I do is I just take crop size and trim, trim, trim. And one other thing, one other cool tip is that I can hit the tab key, and that'll toggle the menus on and off. And so anyway, you can sort of see what you're doing there. Um, so let's see, oops, not that one, that one. So anyway, I sort of trim, and okay, that's about as tight as I can get it. But I can do better than that, it turns out. If I use this crop AABB, which stands for axis aligned bounding volume, what I can do is also, let's rotate it a bit. So now I'm kind of rotating it so that it's kind of squared off. And I'll also try to rotate it this direction so that the base is kind of level. And so that looks pretty good. Anyway, so what I can do is do this, and now I could pull it in even a little bit closer. So let's see, I think it's this max. Yeah, so I'm going to pull the back wall in. I can go, you know, look at the tail, make sure I didn't cut the horse's tail off. And, you know, that's pretty reasonable. I could probably get a little fancier with like min Y and, you know, cut off the base a little bit, maybe min Z, you know, etc. But anyway, these are just a way to sort of focus in on your model and make it nice and, you know, what your focus is. And when you're done with that, what you can do is then close down this control, like make these controls go away by just doing the crop there. And so now I'm all set pretty much. And by the way, if you want, what you can do anytime you make a NeRF like this is to do a save at any point to save your results. And then if you were to reopen Instant NGP, you can just do load on that model, and it'll get you all that training data back, so you don't have to wait again for a few minutes. So on to making a camera. So let's just, in fact, this is a fine place to start. We'll just we'll go. Let's do something like this. Okay, so we'll start there. Add from camera. So now we've made a camera, and that's our sort of first keyframe. And I'm just using the mouse, like the mouse middle button lets me pan around like this. The mouse scroll wheel lets me zoom. So, okay, so maybe I move over to here, and I say, yeah, that's a pretty good frame. I add from camera, and you know, move around again. And let's say I take one from here, something like that. You know, nothing too exciting, but hey, it's, you know, what I'm going to do here is make just a little cool animation. And let's get a sort of dramatic final shot here, something like that. And add from cam. And then now if you back up, you'll see I have these cameras, and you can see the path. The dashed line is the path. And one other cool feature, well, oh, by the way, you can also do this kind of thing, save on your path. But one other cool feature that I like is that you can also make a looping animation, so you can just have some continuous loop, something you can play. So anyway, we're all set now. We've set up our path. All we have to do is render. So what we're going to do is, let's call this Devon's for the name of the guy. And I like a 15-second. 5 is too short. And 30 frames per second is probably plenty fine. So this all looks good. So now I can just hit render. And what's going to happen is, as you can see, it's going to render. And it approximates about how long time that render will take. In this case, it's probably a low estimate just because we're going in close to the model, and that when you get closer, it's just going to take longer. Like you can see, the remaining time is, if anything, it's going up, but only for ever so slightly. But anyway, in about 2 or 3 minutes, it'll be done, and I'll be back with you at that point. Here's the last few seconds of the process. You can see it took about 4 minutes total, and now it's just taking all those frames and making a final video out of it. And we should have a video. It's fresh out of the oven. Let's go here. And it won't be in the Chesterwood directory or wherever, you know, your data normally is. It's actually up above where Instant NGP is. And here's what the video looks like. So, you know, nothing Academy Award winning or anything, but, you know, made a nice little looping video, and in not a very long time. So that's about it, and I hope you have a great time using this software. It's really pretty fun.